Funk folklore.
Twinkle twinkle bubble bubble.
What's up, everybody? What's up, Mr. Eugene Chapman? We got saxophone legend Eugene Chapman in the building, everybody. So today, the topic of the show is funk folklore. And I picked this topic for you, Eugene, because you are probably the one guy who's taught me more about funk music and the whole vibe and the whole scene. And if you don't know, Mr. Chapman has played with the biggest groups, the greatest funk, R&B, jazz legends all across the country, from DC to Los Angeles. And so, how are you doing, Eugene?
Doing pretty good, man.
How you been making out since the whole lockdown, pandemic stuff? Because I know we had talked a little bit about how you did some drive-in concerts and some live streaming stuff. Tell the folks about what's your experience with that, and how have you been doing lately?
It's been pretty interesting. Lately, as everybody knows, it's just like the world has completely changed. It has forced us to live in a virtual reality. I mean, we used to talk about this in the 90s, and now it's our reality. So it's so many avenues that we can communicate and distribute music now. Everything has changed. When you were talking about the drive-through concert, this was last summer when I was worked with the Earth, Wind & Fire tribute band, and we did a concert up in Havre de Grace, which was sold out.
Wow.
And people were, just drove and sat in their cars, or they had, like lawn seats or whatever, and they just watched us on a stage.
So that's what was my question about it. Like, do they just try to squeeze in like 500,000 cars into a big field? Or like, how does it work? Do they get to like stand outside their car? Do they have to leave their car running? I feel like that's a lot of like exhaust fumes going into the air.
Well, actually, they just parked their cars, and it was in a parking lot.
Okay.
People were sitting outside their cars and watching the show. Social distancing. Some people were watching inside their car. So it all depends on the individual's preference.
So how do you hear the music when you're in the car? Is there like a radio station receiver type of thing? Because I've done that before at like church services where they send the audio onto like an FM radio station. Was that type of thing set up, or were you aware of that? Or
no, I don't believe in this particular situation. I don't believe that was the setup.
Okay.
I think some people were just kind of listening, the vibration coming from the stage, because it's a frequency.
Yeah,
so it carries.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I guess if you just have a powerful enough sound system, it'll work, right?
Right.
But that's cool. So it just goes to show you that, music really is recession proof. I remember having this conversation back in, I think it was like 2008, 2009, somewhere in there, where you had the recession. And there was a big idea that music is recession proof, but is it really pandemic proof? So we talked about the drive-in concerts. What's your experience with doing stuff like this, like the whole live streaming, setting up a camera and just going for it? Like, have you done a lot of that stuff as well?
With other groups.
Okay.
Because that's the shift. That's where it's going.
Right.
It's a different format than what most people are used to. I mean, people are accustomed to going out, hearing live entertainment, seeing live performers, which is a experience in itself. But now, because of what's taking place, this is where we are.
Yeah.
And I think for some people, it's just an adjustment because of the shift.
But how has it really affected you? Because you seem to be not slowing down at all. If anything, I feel like your career is as established as it ever was. So like, I see you doing stuff, and you're in the studio, you're here, you're at this venue, you're at that venue. I'm like, how is he in all these venues? Are there 10 people in the audience? But it sounds like you're doing the drive-ins where that kind of solves that problem a little bit. But that's really cool, man. I'm glad that you, of all people, because you're one of my favorite musicians of all time.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm glad that guys of your caliber are not starving in this environment. And then you also teach, right? Are you still doing students during this thing? Because
honestly, the majority of my students are in college.
Okay.
So I'm going to have some new students in the future, but for now, no.
Okay,
No
they're like,
students.
all right, I'm going to school.
They're in
and
college.
My time is all being spent on Zoom with like actual professors instead of guys like us. Like, hey, we know what we're talking about. We don't have a pedagogy degree, but listen to us. But that's really funny, man. I had Steve Garrison. He had some really good points about how teaching is a really great hustle nowadays because you can do it online, and just like all the college professors are doing. Which I always thought was kind of a racket because you're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for a Harvard degree or something, and it's like, well, we're just on Zoom, right? But so let's get into today's topic, and then of course I want to ask you more about your projects because I know you have some singles and some other stuff going out very soon. But let's talk about the topic today, which is funk folklore. What was your earliest memory of getting into like Parliament Funkadelic? uh, Ohio Players, even Zapp and Roger Troutman, these kind of guys that, riding to and from gigs with you. You turned me on to some crazy, awesome, like historic funk, some really important musical developments. Tell me something about that. Why is it so closely resonating with you personally?
I can honestly say a lot of people, I don't know if people recall, but in the 1990s, there was a big resurgence in funk music. Quite frankly, my introduction to Parliament Funkadelic was the rap group from Oakland, Digital Underground.
Really?
Because Shock G and his crew, especially Shock G, he was Humpty Hump. It took me a long time to realize that was him, and he's a character. Humpty Hump is a character,
Right?
Which he adapted from the philosophy of P-Funk. With George Clinton, creating characters, because in George's philosophy was characters long laster than people do.
Right. That's true.
He had all these characters from Star Child to Certain O's Devoid of Funk, Mr. Wiggles, Dr. Funkenstein, Uncle Jam, and so forth and so on. But I even back then I realized that with the whole Digital Underground phenomenon, there was something that was different than the other groups in hip hop during that time. And you got to understand too that hip hop during that era was very diverse.
Oh,
because
yeah.
you had guys talking about consciousness, political, education, the street, party. Spiritual, it was just an interesting golden age in hip hop. But Digital Underground really resonated with me because they were just out there, and I was, I've always was into science fiction and comic books and all of that. And once I discovered who their influence was, I went back and realized, okay, this is George Clinton. I'm starting to see him in a lot of these videos. There's Bootsy Collins, and I asked my mother, who are these people? And she explained to me who they were, and they were part of the group, the phenomenon Parliament Funkadelic. And I would just look at the album covers that just blew me away. The philosophy blew me away. I never seen anything like it, because also too, where I grew up, a lot of the kids were they were into their parents. Also, like because there was a big grunge scene with the groups like Soundgarden and Nirvana, Pearl Jam. There was a big surge and change in rock, but they were also into their parents' music, like the Led Zeppelins and the Beatles, Grateful Dead. But for me, a group like Parliament Funkadelic was like my Zeppelin, my Grateful Dead. Something that I could identify with.
That's like the blueprint, right? That's the root where everything comes out of, and that's really cool because from what I understand, those guys that were running the hip hop groups in the 90s, they were all huge fans of the funk groups that had just come
even
like
the West
10,
Coast
20 years before.
The West Coast rappers, especially Dr. Dre, I mean, Snoop Dogg, they're students.
And it's also really cool because I don't want to gloss over that your mom was the one that kind of educated you about some of these, because I had that experience myself. My dad turned me on to bands like P-Funk and Gentle Giant and Zappa and all of that, and then I had my mom who turned me more onto the like classic rock side and the Doors and the Beatles and etc. And so it's really cool when parents are supportive of their kids' like musical journey, and then they help kind of guide them along and say, hey, check out these guys, check out these guys. But that's really cool. Now, when you said you had discovered P-Funk, was it because of a sampling thing, or was it more just the vibe and the aesthetic?
Yeah,
And
it was many factors. The samples were there,
right.
and what's interesting about Digital Underground, they would sample, but you couldn't tell that it was them. They would put it in another key because Shock G's a keyboardist, pianist. He knew how to do that. He could put it in a different key, but the vibe, you could feel it was kind of like in that P-Funk vein, and like,
yeah.
it's brilliant.
It's just like Jay Dilla taking like a classical string sample and like mangling it and turning it into a completely different thing, and now it sounds like a disco record or something.
Right, absolutely.
But that's really cool because I had a similar experience where I discovered a lot of those songs through the sampling that guys like Snoop Dogg and guys like Ice Cube and stuff, because they were, you know, huge superstars in the late 90s when I was coming up. And so I was like, where are these songs coming from? And you're playing Grand Theft Auto and you're hearing the you know, especially like San Andreas, right? They had the hip hop sampled versions, and then you could change over to the funk station, and then they would have the original versions. You'd hear the Ohio Players, and you'd hear you know, Rick James and all of that. So through video games, but also through family, it's just, I feel like maybe it's just a thing of this area where that music just permeates, which is weird because it's from the other coast, right? But it's a global sound. It's funk,
it's universal.
Funk is something that everybody can kind of get down with, even down to Chuck Brown. Right?
It's about that one.
Yeah,
that one is everything.
Yeah, you got it. Right. And that was what James Brown said all the time. Right?
Yeah, definitely. You got to be on the one, man.
So tell us some stories. Tell us some folklore. Tell us some legends that nobody ever knows. Because I heard you on the phone with somebody on the way here, and you were like, "Oh, that dude was into this and this and this and this," and I was like, "Uh-oh, he's spilling the tea now." Tell us, I don't know, whatever comes to mind. Some secret, you know, gritty. Doesn't have to be like inappropriate, but this is a family-friendly show.
Ooh, boy.
But feel free to use euphemisms where appropriate.
You know, I'll say this. I had when I was in Los Angeles, I had worked with Malia Franklin. She was definitely known as in the P-Funk realm as the Queen of Funk, and she brought everybody from Bootsy, Junie Morrison, the late Junie Morrison, Jerome Rogers, into the fold of Parliament Funkadelic, and that those guys helped revolutionize the sound, Clinton's vision, as I would say,
right? Along
with, you know, Gary Schreider and Bernie Worrell and Eddie Hazel and Michael Hampton, and Fred Wesley, and so forth.
I love Bernie, man.
She was like, you know, she was like my second family. So of course I got a chance to work with Blackbird McKnight, who's one of my favorite musicians, guitarists. He's from the West Coast, but been with Parliament Funkadelic for, 43, 42 years, for a long time.
Oh, man.
And then, you know, of course, I work with some of the P-Funkers here, too. They live in this area. So they're like I would say like my second family. And the stories they share with me is like,
come on, man, give me some guts, give me some grease, give me some seasoning.
I don't know, man.
Give me some hot sauce.
You may have to go find the books.
Well, like, so, but how do you find out about this stuff? You're just like cool on a personal level with these people, where they feel like that, you know, they can share stuff, and you don't necessarily want to repeat everybody's dirty laundry out there publicly, right? But I always find that stuff interesting. You know, you could leave the names redacted and whatnot. But you know, when me and Ron were coming back from the NAMM show and we saw Dennis Chambers, man, he had some stories too.
Man,
he was telling us, and we're just strangers, and he had some stories. It's like
he's got some funny stories.
Yeah,
you know, some things he won't even tell me, but it's his stories are laughable. I mean, just a mess.
Well, we have funk folklore. I know you're a huge fan of Prince. Tell me some background stuff about Prince, because you've told me some Prince facts that surprised me. One of them was about his skill as a jazz keyboard player That's one thing that I wasn't aware of, and I went back and checked I found the documents, and it's true. He really was an insanely talented guy on the keys, on the bass, on the drums, on all the different stuff. And whether you're a Prince fan or not, you cannot deny the guy's level of skill. So what's your experience with Prince and something that maybe even Prince fans may not know?
Wow. His music was in every phase of my life, from the time I was 3 years old up until now.
And he kind of changed phases with you, right?
And that's what I love. I mean, you talk about the consummate artist, creative genius. In terms of his background, his father was a jazz pianist, John Nelson. He had a jazz trio called the Prince Rogers Trio in Minneapolis. And his mom was the vocalist, but for the most part, it was just a jazz trio.
That's interesting.
So it really, I think he has some of his father's characteristics musically, even though he's not considered a jazz musician per se, but he has the ability to absorb everything around him. Right. Doesn't matter what genre, if he digs a musician, he's going to take something from that and make it his own. That's what I love about him. Some people are like, oh, he copied this person. Well, I mean, we all copy somebody.
Yeah.
But when you listen to him, you hear so many people. You hear everybody from like a Fleetwood Mac. You hear Larry Graham.
Oh yeah.
You hear James Brown. You hear Sly Stone.
He's like doing Larry Graham stuff on
right,
because
he's a student. He's a student of Larry Graham. You hear P-Funk. I mean, God, you hear Santana, Carlos Santana.
And then his image, he had kind of a Little Richard.
And definitely a little bit of Jimi Hendrix, whether he admitted it or not. It's so many things in that guy.
So in your opinion, did he consciously listen to and seek out all these different musicians and like songs? And did he do that on purpose, do you think? Or did it just happen magically, naturally?
In his case,
through the ether.
He went through different phases.
Right.
And that's the problem that I have with a lot of the fans. They only want to celebrate one era of Prince. Yeah. I get sick of that. There's so many different facets to Prince. You may have a favorite era of Prince. That's cool. But as myself personally as a fan, there's so much to him. I don't understand how you can look at an artist like him or artists like Stevie Wonder or an artist like Herbie Hancock or artists like Miles Davis and be like, well, I only like this period. Like most people only like the period with Miles, like when he did Birth of Cool, Kind of Blue, Sketches of Spain, like more towards the late 60s with Bitches Brew, Files of Kilimanjaro, Live Evil, On the Corner. On the Corner is a great album. His tribute to Jack the Boxer, the late boxer, Jack Johnson. See, when he started moving in that more jazz rock fusion period, you had some critics who were like, no. Or we don't understand what he's doing. But he was just taking what he had already developed as his own language, his own sound, and was applying it to what was going on in that time frame. Because his concept was the music has to reflect the times or what's going on socially.
Absolutely.
Or what is the atmosphere of the day.
And Zappa was kind of the same way.
Same thing.
People are like, oh, I'm not a fan of Zappa. He's way out there. And it's like, well, but if you didn't know, Zappa actually had hit records. He had stuff that was played on the radio. It was Dancing Fool and stuff. So he actually had really popular songs, and he didn't just do one thing. He kind of changed.
Oh, he could do everything. Frank could do everything.
Political satire, But I think what you're saying is that we have the super fans and the rabid fanboys of these artists, and they want to pigeonhole them into one thing. But you're saying that artists should be allowed to evolve and grow and integrate different sounds and different things over time.
It's art. It's supposed to evolve like everything else. Technology evolves.
Right.
We as human beings, we evolve.
And it's such a like shocking, horrifying thing. Like when Justin Bieber, starts doing more adult themed music, right? And people are like, forget about Justin Bieber, or like Miley Cyrus even. Like she gets a lot of hate for coming out as like, oh, I'm not a little kid anymore.
Right.
I'm an adult. But
that was the thing.
I feel like that's part of the business, though. Like you have to constantly be
right.
reinventing yourself, or you're going to be irrelevant.
I mean, why would you be 25 years old and writing these bubblegum songs like you're 16?
Exactly.
There's a big difference.
And people hate on her like she's some sort of bad person. Like, oh, she's sold out, or oh, now she's a Satanist or something. It's like she's just doing what she thinks is best for her career. Like support her or don't. Like she doesn't need you to buy her music. Like there's plenty of other people who will anyway.
Hey, look, everybody likes what they like. Some people like apples. Some people like oranges.
Not that I'm like the biggest.
Some people like both.
The biggest Miley Cyrus, Justin Bieber
Doesn't matter.
fan, but like I'll eat an orange once in a while.
Yeah,
you know,
it all depends on your taste.
I'm not just gonna be like, all right, no more oranges ever again for the rest of my life.
Right. And that was the same thing with Michael Jackson. You know, everybody knew him as this young boy in Jackson 5 phenomenon.
Yep.
And then, of course, you know, he went on to do The Wiz, and he linked up with Quincy Jones, and they created history. I mean, it was Off the Wall. Off the Wall established him as an adult artist.
Right.
Because that was one of his concerns in his career. Will people forget about me? Will I be forgettable? You know, they just only know me as a child star. I mean, he's another brilliant artist that has all these ideas, and he wanted to get it out to the people, and he had a message, you know. And him and Quincy and everybody else, they created history. Changed the world.
Michael, weirdly enough, though, it seems like he always sounded like Michael Jackson. And like I know some people say The Weeknd sounds like Michael Jackson and stuff, but I think Michael Jackson always sounded like Michael Jackson. Right. And we're talking about evolving and stuff, but it's weird how some artists just have a way to just keep that thread going all the way through, and then the fans still love it.
Right.
But you know, I'm sure he experimented and did
all
other
day.
Stuff too. You know,
all
just like Prince having what 500,000 songs in the vault
or more,
just demos that nobody will ever hear. It's like you have to feel like you have the space to do that as an artist, and that's why we're doing this right here. This is like that for me. I think is it gives me a chance to, you know, take off the keyboard player hat for a couple of minutes and let's just have a conversation. Let's just tell the folks. Let's let the folks out there get a chance to know us as people,
right?
And not just like, oh, he plays the pentatonic scale this way and he plays the pentatonic scale that way. It's like, well, I think if you know who you're listening to and you know about them, that's what made Michael Jackson so great and so beloved and Prince so great, is that they wore their heart on their sleeve. Yeah. They came out and they bore their soul and dove directly into...
And gave you more.
Yeah. And they went into controversial topics and you know, civil rights and...
Political, all of it.
Yeah, very, very deep issues, especially with Prince. So the question is, who is better, Prince or Michael Jackson?
Again, Michael and Prince are from two different worlds.
Yeah, it's like you said, apples and oranges.
I'll say this. Yeah. They were born the same year. They came to prominence in the same era. They're both from the Midwest. They have incredible work ethic, incredible creativity, but apples and oranges.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great conversation for any musician to have. And for me, I'll just start to wrap it up. And I still want to ask you, don't let me forget about your projects. But I just wanted to slide this in there that for me, you're like a guy that I consider like an older, smarter, wiser, more experienced, like kind of a mentor. And you know stuff about these artists and these musicians and these bands and all of the backstories that I will never know. Like you can't even read this stuff in books. Like I wouldn't even know where to start the Google search. But you have like influenced me and mentored me in so many different things, not just musically, but historically. And you got to know where you come from. You got to know your history or you're doomed to repeat it.
Right, because my thing is, if you don't know the history or you don't know the artist's story, how are you going to understand the music?
Right. And that's one thing, like, I was never that big of a Prince fan, but you kind of showed me so much of the deep, like, things that were underlying in his artistry that I had no idea about. And I started digging into it, and I became a Prince fan after he passed away, unfortunately. But that was such a great experience, and I think that musicians out there should have older people. You're not that much older than me, but older people who know more, who have done more, who have played with more people, gone on more tours, who you can look up to and not feel like, oh, well, I'm always the biggest guy in the room, because you make me feel like that. You make me feel like I have still work to do. I
have work to do. I have work to do.
Well, tell me this: do you have folks in your life who are older, who are smarter, wiser?
Oh yeah,
right. So
exactly.
So there you go.
Yep. Thank God.
But let's wrap it up with this: folklore, or you could abbreviate it. You could just call it Folklore. So you're putting out some music. Are you doing more jazz stuff nowadays? Are you doing funk stuff nowadays? Because we always do like a jam, some kind of little musical thing, and you said, I don't want to do no jazz and no funk. Let's do some like house music, right? Let's do some EDM. Let's do some trance. And I'm like, dude, cool, because I don't get a chance to do that with everybody. But what are you putting out? What are you working on? Plug your website, your Facebook page, any links you have.
Okay.
The floor is yours.
Right. Well, currently I'm working on a project that will be entitled Sonically Yours. This will be my debut project, solo project.
It's a cool title.
Where I'm working on different tracks, and I'm collaborating with other producers and writers right now. So I'm excited about this. It's kind of got that. I hate to use the term urban or urbanish, kind of like that R&B infused with jazz, funky.
Hey, nothing wrong with that at all.
With that, that hip hop thickness under. It's all funky to me anyway. It comes from Africa.
But it's not like,
if we want to be technical about it. But
right, you're right, absolutely right.
From a marketing standpoint, if you want to put me in a shoebox, then hey, but look, it's just music to me. It's a vibe. I just go off of a vibe. It's it's one nation under a groove anyway.
Right.
So that's how I look at the world.
So you could say it like this. You could say that it's a genre-defying, eclectic blend of sounds and styles.
There you go.
but so
feel good music.
It sounds like it's not going to be boring, like thin, like weak Kenny G elevator music type stuff, right? You're putting some bass in there, you're putting some funk, you're putting some heaviness
soul
to it,
and all of it, man.
Yeah.
Everything that's in me is going to be on this project.
That's what's up.
And it's going to make sense.
Well, if you need some keyboards or some synth, dude,
you're going to be on this record. you're going to have.
I think we already worked a little bit on something that you wanted to.
You're going to have
anyway.
a lot of involvement on this project.
So that's Sonically Yours. Do you have a date in mind yet? It's still early for that.
I want to say spring 2021, between spring and summer, no later than the summer.
Well, we'll come back on this video. We'll put all the links down there. Sonically Yours. When you come out with a single or whatever, we'll bring you back on the show. If you drop the album by then, bring you back. We'll see if lovely, beautiful people out there want to support you, because that's what this show really is about. Like, it's not just me. I could sit here and play piano all day long, but if I'm bored with that, I know the folks out there got to be getting bored with it at some point.
I love listening to you, so I can't imagine myself getting bored with your playing.
Well, I think just
I'm a fan.
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that, But like I said, I want to introduce people to the people who have introduced me to so much great music and so much great knowledge and wisdom. And, I have the gear here, I have the setup to be able to do it. Luckily my dad taught me stuff about camera and lighting and backlighting and backdrops and focus and aperture and color grading and white balance. And so with that knowledge, I'm not just going to sit here and promote myself all day long. I want to bring other people in and make it about the collective. And so that's the reason I'm doing this. But thank you, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show. My dad was a legend. He always loved the way you played. He was there at our very last Clubhouse show at your Saxophone Legends show, where we didn't even really get into saxophone players tonight. But if you want to get some background info on some sax players, go check out the Jazz Saxophone Legends series that we did on YouTube. And that'll be, I might put the link down in the comments or something. So that's more about your saxophone knowledge. But I appreciate you coming here because, like I said, my dad loved you, and I've been kind of in a funk lately with the family stuff going on, and I really appreciate having such great, like, talented, but also like smart and forward-thinking, positive guys in my life, such as you. So thank you for being here, man.
I'm honored. I'm honored.
I know this was a little tough, and I know you got other stuff. You got 5 million other things going on your schedule today, man. But you were still here, and I just want to let you know I appreciate that so much. And all of you out there, leave some comments, leave some love for Mr. Eugene Chapman. You got a website or a link or an Instagram or anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
I'm on Facebook. My name Eugene Chapman. Instagram Eugene Chapman 3. The website is being developed, so hopefully by the time I'm ready to release the project, then we'll have all that information available to the public.
Awesome. Well, like I say, let me know anything else you want to put out. I'll go ahead and put it in the description. I'll put it in the comments. But before we get out of here, we're going to do some music for you guys in a second. But even before we do that, make sure that you hit that like button if you want to be... actually, hit that like button if you're feeling our threads this evening. If you're liking Eugene's kind of Morpheus swag over there, and if you're liking my little Christmas tie over here, leave a comment in the comment section down below if you have any questions for Eugene about any of his folklore or about any of his upcoming projects. I'm sure he would appreciate to hear from all of you lovely folks out there. And turn on the notification bell if you want to be notified of future uploads. And last but not least, share this video. Share. Sharing is caring. All right? Just like you're sharing your time with me tonight. Share this video with all the musicians you know, all the sax players you know, all of the jazz players you know. I think that's just about it. Eugene Chapman 3 on Instagram. Sonically yours. All right. And that is Folklore. We're going to do a quick jam for you guys, and we will be back in just a second.